So Mike, welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for being here with us today. Got our coffee, so ready to rock and roll. So Mike, you are a data leader, I think it's fair to say, with a pretty long and illustrious career in fintech and financial services. You're currently the head of data science for Kriya. I'm saying that's Kriya, isn't it? Not?
That's the one.
Just making sure. I don't want to do the whole podcast saying the name wrong. Which is formerly MarketFinance, as we know, which is as a business is a leading B2B credit and payments company. And I can only imagine in these, let's use the word interesting times we're all living through at the moment, that the B2B credit space and access to capital for a lot of businesses must be particularly poignant at the moment. So I bet you've got your hands full. And based on my understanding of the B2B fintech market, I can only assume that data science must underpin a lot of the decision engines and all the credit agreements and that kind of thing. So I'm sure a very important part of the business at Kriya as well. So really keen to pick your brains today on your role and your I guess how you're leading the data science function there. But as always, like to start with you, and let's talk a little bit about you and your background, and for the listeners, sort of how you got into the world of data and how you got to the dizzy heights of head of data science. So yeah, if you'd be so kind, talk us through a little bit of your background and in your career today.
Yeah, no, would love to. So I always say that I'm quite unusual in my career, in that my career has taken a fairly linear path, and that seems to be increasingly rare nowadays. So I guess just starting from the beginning, I was coming out of university, having done maths, and it's a topic that I picked just because as a kid you don't know what you're going to do, and you want to kind of give yourself maximum optionality on the things that you enjoy. And I took a placement year in between my second and final year, working at Experian, and that's I guess that was the start of always working in financial services with data. Affected some of the modules I picked in the final year, and actually, when I went to left university, I was going into one of Experian's clients, and I guess it carries on from there. But my first job out of university, risk analyst, kind of focused very much on a risk management domain, but doing like kind of data analysis, solving problems on who do we give money to, how do we price for that, how do we share insights to our leaders to help to define the proposition and yada, yada, yada. A couple of years there, and then moved to a couple of years at Hitachi Capital, and then moved on to Yorkshire Bank, that later became Virgin Money. I was there for just about 8 years, and really kind of grew my career a lot, focusing on credit risk modelling. Again, trying to build the computer says no tools that allow customers to get quick decisions at fair prices, and make sure that the bank was properly capitalised, which was certainly very important. Looking back at what happened in 2008 with the global financial crisis, and what may certainly be very topical now. Coming out of pandemics, going into cost of living crises, and to bring me up to my latest job, about 2.5 years ago, I moved to MarketFinance, now Kriya, as head of data science, and at that point I was kind of broadening out just from that kind of credit risk domain to solving data problems across the whole company, from like those commercial problems, marketing problems, etc. So where I am at the moment, I lead a small team of very talented data individuals, and we pair with the business to make sure that we are data led and well informed, and we have those best in class processes that allow us to give great customer experiences.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thanks for that as an overview. That's a very useful insight into how we've got to where we've got to. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll delve a little bit further into your role as the head of data science for Kriya and sort of how you approach things momentarily. But it's interesting, like I say, it is quite an uncommon thing that I obviously speak to a lot of candidates on a daily basis, and it is quite a rarity now to see that kind of really like methodical, logical, linear career progression, within a particular domain. Obviously there's lots of problems being solved with data science all over the place, and clearly financial services is a huge area where data science is being applied. But was it always a logical or an intentional choice for you to stick within financial services and fintech, and if so, why?
Yeah, on day one, obviously not. So I remember back to looking for those placements, and yeah, I guess as I said, as a student, and you don't know what the world of work truly is like.
Yeah, I certainly
didn't. I landed one placement and I loved it, and I certainly think back in sort of the late noughties, data as an industry isn't what it is today, but financial services was ahead of its time because the types of problems that it needed to solve required data. The regulatory pressures required data. And so actually there I was finding that I was kind of cutting edge of the data industry working in financial services. That possibly isn't true anymore because, we've seen, across the board, all industries really harness power of data, and there's a lot more kind of, let's say, interesting problems or unconstrained problems from a regulatory oversight perspective that are being solved.
Very much so, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we'll delve into your sort of role and obviously, how leading a data science function in a regulated industry, how you sort of tackle that quagmire. But you mentioned, obviously lots of different applications in the world of data science now, lots of problems in different sectors. Is there outside of financial services, a particular industry that really appeals to you that you think would be very exciting, domain that data science is being applied to at the moment?
Not specifically. So, I mean, a couple of years ago, I had this kind of mini career crisis, thinking, am I pigeonholed in myself? And I went to look for what opportunities there would be to switch industry. And actually, at the end of that process, I realised I love what I'm doing, and that was quite a nice process to go through to realise you've actually got your right purpose.
Yeah.
So to go back to your previous question, it started by accident, but it ended up being deliberate.
Well,
so
that's always nice.
Yeah, slightly lucky there. But I very much like to keep in touch with the wider data industry. I love going to meetup events and just hearing talks and speaking to people about what problems they're solving. I find it interesting. Also, I find it inspiring.
Yeah.
There may be a problem that somebody is solving in fast-moving consumer goods, and you're thinking, well, actually, that sounds a lot like this other problem, and just no one in the industry solves it like that. So that just inspires a new way of thinking.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that because genuinely is one of the things I really love about recruiting for the data science space is that, True North is a business, we're still a relatively young company, but when I started the business, I was very intentional about what I wanted the business to be about. And, as cheesy and as esoteric as it might sound, our mission is to help people be happy at work, to follow their hence where the name came from, follow their purpose. And, I think if people do that, the level of fulfillment they can derive from the jobs they do is, just infinite compared to those people that are turning up every day, going through the grind, doing something they don't enjoy. And surveyed the whole of the tech landscape when we started the business and thought, right, I genuinely believe data science is the next sort of hot area, and certainly not going anywhere, obviously, with the advances of AI and that kind of thing that are happening. But one of the things that I love is that when you speak to people, largely within data science, it is their passion. They genuinely love doing it. So when you can kind of place somebody into a domain, into a job that they really enjoy, it is their passion, it's actually what they would do maybe outside of the office, sort of tinker around, do their own sort of pet projects, go to conferences and tech talks and that kind of thing. It's obviously really fulfilling. So it's great to hear that, you're obviously in that space as well, and you're very passionate about the role. So talk us through then, what does it mean to you to be a head of data science, and how do you approach the role? And I know that's a very big open-ended question, so we can certainly break that down into other areas. But yeah, talk us through, you know, kind of when you first arrived in that position as head of data science. How did you feel? What did you sort of have to maybe build on as far as the skill set goes? What experiences have you had that sort of, just talk us through that initial journey.
Yeah, so as a career move, coming from a larger banking institution to a fintech, I knew there'll be a cultural shift. So one thing I was very mindful of is how do I adapt to that? Now, I'd always been the let's say the rebel or the person who wanted to move faster at the corporate. So I had that natural gravity to work in that environment. But sometimes before when you get boots on the ground, you see things through a new light. So very much in that kind of 100 or let's say 30-day plan, is making sure that I observe and soak up the culture and the way of working and that sort of thing. But I guess I wanted to both bring that kind of governance maturity that you have at big firms, but meld it with the agile and creativity nature of the small firms to find like a really nice unison between those concepts. My leadership style though is that I like to be the snowplow. And sometimes when I describe what I do, it sounds like I do nothing, and I just delegate it all to the team. But I think that being a head of data science, operating like that is a good way to is a good way to achieve results. So setting frameworks and making sure that those processes are there to support the team. You don't have unnecessary bureaucracy. You have the right amount of creative freedom, but you've got those guardrails that are preventing you from going off course. I do spend a lot of my time making sure I support the team on, I guess, let's say, defining the problem statement and then also confirming that the release is successful. Because I think that those kind of stages end up being, you're dependent on stakeholders and people in other teams to really confirm that. And if you get those stages wrong, you don't deliver value. So I think that's possibly the place that I like to get involved in the most. But I guess to summarise all that, just providing that kind of safe, comfortable, best practice space for others to deliver their best work.
Nice, fantastic. Yeah, we'll definitely love to hear a little bit more about your leadership style momentarily. But going from a bigger corporate like Virgin Money to to Kriya, did you feel having exposure to that sort of bigger business, did that help you implement kind of more robust processes? And do you feel that was sort of a useful, because we see, I speak to a lot of people often that are keen to make that transition from one to the other, but they're not too sure about how their skill set's going to play out if they've worked in a sort of smaller scaling business and then go into a bigger corporate, they don't know if they necessarily got the wider range of skills they need and vice versa. So did you feel that actually having that knowledge of a bigger business, was helpful when moving into a company like MarketFinance at the time?
Yes, I think it's important to self-reflect and think that these are the things that I'm strong at and I can give to the business. And also, I guess, as coming in a leadership role, it's always nice to be given autonomy and freedom to harness those skills and to strengthen the company you're going into. Yeah. But equally, what is your learning opportunity? And most people want learning opportunities when they go into new jobs. Yeah. And actually, when I joined, one of the biggest kind of, let's say, gaps that I was aware of is I'd never coded in Python. And
interesting.
Yeah. So
what had you coded in?
I'd used R. I'd used SAS, which basically only like big banks and some healthcare providers kind of like use in big scale. And then kind of things like VBA and stuff when I was younger and all that. But what I think is really important is if you know how to learn, you can learn things very, very quickly. So I always knew what I wanted to achieve. I had some transferable snippets of knowledge in my head, and actually I spent some time just kind of getting the basics, and actually probably like sort of 3 months into the role, I felt pretty competent in that. Now I'll never profess to be an expert, and there's certainly a lot of people in the team that are very very strong, much stronger than I am. But I don't need to be. I don't need to be that strong, and I think knowing what your gaps are, and knowing how to learn, and having that plan, and knowing what good looks like, just made sure that going into that role, I was ready.
Nice. I like that. I've never heard that sort of phrase before, knowing how to learn. But yeah, I think it's very true. A lot of job specs that you see for data science professionals are just so absurd. With every single library, technology, coding language out there under the sun, and you're never going to find that particular person. If you are, you're fishing in a very small pool. So a large portion of my job is obviously to understand and look at what are the core components that actually really need in this person, and what are you prepared to, for the right attitude and the right personality, what are you prepared to them to upskill on the job. But I like the phrase, if you know how to learn. So break that down for me. What do you mean by that in terms of, how do you coach somebody on learning, I suppose, what you've mentioned there?
So I guess really old school concept, and it actually surprises me how many people I come across that haven't heard of the 70-20-10 rule. That a good kind of strategy to learn is you spend sort of kind of 10% in the classroom, 20% talking to people, and 70% doing. And so and also I know that I'm a kinesthetic learner, and that's the way that I retain knowledge. So again, partly is understanding yourself and having some very basic frameworks to go about. But I use an example here. So I had somebody in the team that wanted to learn some kind of machine learning approaches, and there's loads of online tools to help you to learn this, but they all use either synthetic data, happy path cases. You're talking about Iris and Titanic data sets that are used in all of the textbooks and all of the courses. But I don't think that really teaches you anything. It teaches how to press run on some code and to copy. But I think really if you're learning, I think that applying it to a problem that means something to you, I think that partly that stokes passion and it gives you purpose. But also you see all of those little unhappy path cases, and we always work in, everybody's working in the unhappy path. There's real data is dirty, real problems are not as well defined. Sometimes experiments fail, all of these sort of things. And so actually, in this example, I said to the person, okay, well, you've got what you want to learn. What problem does this solve? Or ideally be led by that problem, and then I guess you've got something meaningful out of it. It helps that you can use a bit of work time because you're actually solving a work problem and learning at the same time, and you learn a lot of other things along the way that you didn't expect that are sometimes more valuable than your original learning goal. So I'd make it practical, make it valuable.
Nice. I like that a lot. In fact, the 70-20, I'd never heard of that, 70-20-10 rule.
Maybe I made it up and I didn't know this.
But do you know what? I genuinely would have said the same thing in recruitment as well. That 70% of it, you can spend all day pretty much in a meeting room with a training session, going through the theory, but in reality you learn 70% doing the job, and failing at the end of the day, going wrong and picking yourself back up and moving forward. So, but no, I like it's something I've always taken into everything I've done. Is yes, you've got to understand the fundamentals, but I think a very similar learning to you. I've got to go through it myself, and before I really can experience something. So cool, yeah, I like that a lot. So you mentioned a really good point earlier about demonstrating value for the business, and I think that's a really hot topic in the world of data science because, data science, let's face it, obviously isn't necessarily a new concept. It's been around for a long period of time, but it's definitely the kind of, the sexy poster child in any sort of tech offering within a business now. If they haven't got one, it's like, right, we need a data science function. Why are we not doing data science? And then, you get a lot of powers that be that will hire a head of data science and throw a load of money at it. And one of the biggest kind of challenges that I hear when I speak to the tech leaders and data science leaders within the businesses, how they can get the business to actually understand what it is that data science is going to do and actually be able to demonstrate that value within a certain time frame where they can sort of then continue to receive the support, funding, all the things that they need to sort of continue to grow the function. So how do you go about that whole process as a data science leader? What do you think is important, sort of metrics that to judge on actually demonstrating value to the business? And really interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I guess it starts by keeping your ear to the ground and networking with the business and creating long-lasting partnerships, listening to the problems or seeing the problems through the eyes of those stakeholders. Yeah. I don't think that we should push data science on people, but actually listen to the problems they have and figure out what actually requires that type of solution. And sometimes those solutions are very basic. To go from zero to something is always much more meaningful than to go from something to like world class. There's a lot of low hanging fruit that are still out there to be picked. So I'd start by saying, don't be the data scientist sat in the corner. Network, understand the business that you work in, understand the top 3 problems that someone has, and then minimize time to value. What is the fastest thing that I can do to solve this problem? And actually, I guess once you let's say you start off with there isn't that culture. You're the first data scientist, and you start doing that. You get this perpetual motion where you get that reputation, or somebody trusts you. And I think that's very important, especially when not all data science projects work out. So a lot of them are failed, and that time to value point is quite important. If you get your first project, you say, look, I'm going to go away for 3 months, and it doesn't work out, or the stakeholders' priorities change, or that are you really going to get that much attention from them next time? And that's going to regress you back into the corner. So I think I guess it starts off with that keeping your ear to the ground, and then on the back end, on that kind of release side, watching your data products unfold, see how they work. Yeah. Lots of times I've seen data product released, but its usage kind of breaks itself, that actually now that it's being used, colleagues are behaving in a different way, customers are behaving in a different way. Actually, we've made a change to our product that's not quite kind of compatible with the assumptions that we made going into this. User adoption is poor in some groups, and I think that you have to keep an eye on all of those things, because otherwise you've just built that kind of an output that you're patting yourself on your back saying, hey, I've released it, but if no one's using it, then you haven't actually delivered any impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. And you mentioned there it's the sort of, it's getting the first wins, isn't it, early on, winning trust, and it's that sort of constant value feedback loop, I think, is a really, really important thing. And certainly what I see is kind of a very valuable trait within a data science leader is actually the people skills and the softer skills to have those conversations with the stakeholders and really understand those problems. Because like I said, often the value might not necessarily be instantaneous, or but to actually sort of win the hearts and minds of the people that you're trying to solve a problem for. I see that as a really important thing. But how important do you feel are the kind of softer skills, people skills, as a head of data science in your role? Is that something you feel is particularly relevant?
Yes. I don't think it's the only way to listen to customers and stakeholders. So I try and think about how many different ways can we look, how many different angles can we look at something. Nothing is going to beat relationships. Communication is going to be so key. But you're going to have, there might be some stakeholders that are quite inaccessible, either because very senior or distant, or there's so many of them. You've got 1,000 users in a call center or something like that. So then you've got to find other ways to kind of capture the essence about what's important to them. So the senior stakeholders, like, listen to what they say. Think about, okay, well, you've said this 3 times in a month. That's a problem for you. Who can I sort of speak to, or where can I get information that actually influences you indirectly? Yeah. Or if you're talking about that 1,000 people call center, how do I build user adoption monitoring into my process? So actually I want to log the username every time somebody opens this tool, and then I'll say, well, actually only 30% of users are opening it, and then there's 5% of super users. Why is this? And then that kind of leads on to those questions. But I mean, just from those 2 examples, I think it's just finding, nothing beats communication and talking to people and understanding your customer. But if you can find other ways to listen to them indirectly, that can really kind of give you that 360-degree view about what's important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And just hearing you talk then, it sort of struck me that I think another key trait of a really strong data scientist is just curiosity, isn't it? It's
Absolutely,
sort of how do you interpret the problem and like I say, being able to pick up on the fact, actually, okay, someone hasn't explicitly come to me and said, this is a problem, I need to solve it, but how do you kind of go and search for the potential issue that you can solve? So I like that a lot. Okay, cool. So talk us a little bit about your role now. I guess let's sort of take it to the wider world of the ever-evolving AI and data science landscape that we're kind of living in these days. What are you most excited about moving forward in the world of data science? What sort of exciting trends are you seeing out there?
Well, let me keep this super broad. Everything's getting better all the time. And so what I mean by that is there's the tools you can buy are getting better. Open source is constantly pumping out new things. Everything's got connectors to other things, so it's like it makes it super easy. All of the kind of hyperscale cloud providers are just becoming kind of like one-stop shops, and their products are getting better. AutoML, data engineering tools, etc. I guess there's all of that sort of stuff. Everything's getting better. And then culturally, I think that there's I see indirectly in other industries like data governance, and that is being taken more seriously in that kind of data ethics side. So I think that's quite all collectively, that's a really, really powerful tailwind to get behind the data industry. I think the same problems are gonna persist around dirty data and data literacy and stuff like that. Some of that sort of stuff isn't going to go away, but actually when there's better tooling and frameworks to operate in, I think that just is going to empower people more to spend their time focusing on that those understanding business side of things, rather than kind of legwork that's a lot easier to automate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's the point of technology, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's kind of there to make our lives easier, and the advances of technology and tooling, that's really what it is there to do, and sort of smooth out the process. And it wouldn't be a podcast at the moment if we didn't throw it in there in some way, shape, and form. But ChatGPT, I guess, is a great example for a lot of people where it is solving lots of problems in lots of different ways. Okay, it's far from the the kind of albeit AGI that where everyone's talking about, but it's definitely an incredibly powerful tool that is, certainly from a coding perspective anyway, helping solve lots of problems in a much sort of swifter fashion. Do you use ChatGPT in your role, and if so, How?
So I'll kind of firstly tell you my kind of general views on like generative AI over the last, let's call it 10 years. The technology advancement last year, in my opinion, wasn't actually that great, but it was that cultural shift of when all of a sudden the non-technical person could commoditize it in a way that was useful to them.
Yeah, totally agree.
And then the money comes, and that that is going to power the sales for that next the arms race that's gonna follow. But the first version of ChatGPT came out in 2018. Like, how many people knew about that? How many people used it? But as soon as it gets the media's attention, it's you've seen how viral it's gone. So how do we use it? So, talking about myself and colleagues, we use it in a very kind of light touch way to make our lives easier, to automate those simple tasks. I think sometimes it's best used as that user assist kind of approach. It makes your life easier, but you shouldn't necessarily just pump out the answer. Mm-hmm. The companies, we've gone through these kind of ideation sessions around how we can build, we can incorporate into our products. So we've got a couple of exciting ideas. I won't share them. Just here, yeah, of course. But everybody's doing it. So every month that goes by, there's like, all of a sudden there's a new plugin, and it's like, well, actually we can just do it now with that plugin, or somebody else does it, and actually, well, that validates our use case that this, somebody else is thinking about this, and they're seeing customer value and so forth. So, but I mean, I've always been somebody that I don't think that being first to market is important. I just think that being best to market is important. So, amongst our own kind of company ideation, we're also kind of listening to what other people are doing, and where they're failing and where we can make a V2 on it.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's I actually did a whole episode of the podcast a while ago specifically around ChatGPT, and I agree with you. It's not reinvented the wheel. Obviously, large language models have been around for a long period of time, but I think one of the things, like you said, it has done is the fact it's a publicly available tool. That's what's really turned the dial, isn't it, and turned the needle. So very interesting space to sort of see where we go from here. But cool. Well, I guess in closing, firstly, really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you very much for coming
Likewise.
on, and really interested to hear your insights, and I can see why you've been such a successful data leader, because clearly very passionate about what you're talking about, but also very, very kind of measured and concise with your approach as well. So I always like to end every podcast with the same question, which is, what is your one favourite piece of advice that you have ever received? If you were to pass on to your fellow human, what would that be for you?
Okay, so to give you the most useful piece of advice that I've ever had was the context was I was in my first company, which I spent 3 years at, and sort of 2 years in, I had a lot of frustrations with projects, and sometimes it's very easy to move company, and often get pay rise and stuff, and so I'd found the first job that I could, and I was like ready to walk out the door, and my kind of senior manager had said to me, it's ambitious to leave, but sometimes it's more ambitious to stay.
Great management line, that.
Yeah, and I thought about that. He's just kind of dropped that and walked away. So I mean, there's a lot of things I like this in terms of like his delivery of that, and how it kind of probably empathises. Oh, you're being ambitious, Mike, and stuff like that. But I mean that I took away, and I unpacked so much from that around. Well, actually, what is ambition for me? And actually, what I came to is ambition was, I wanted to be better, and I didn't want to be frustrated at the problems. And the only way that you're going to not be frustrated at the problems is to learn how to manage yourself, learn how to solve those problems, learn how to have logical thinking. And I end up by kind of backing out of the offer, and actually 12 months later I moved on from that company, but it was for the right reasons at the right time to the right role. So it's that piece of advice wasn't necessarily meant to say like, oh, we're gonna like trick you into like having like low confidence and not leaving us, but I think it's just around thinking about things objectively and what problems do you want to solve in the longer term.
That's a great way to end the podcast, and I think particularly relevant for the world of recruitment as well. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's obviously in our line of industry, we don't make money unless people move on from jobs. But I do genuinely see it as our service to people to kind of make sure that if they are looking to move on, they're doing it for the right reasons, for the right opportunity, like you said. And very often, it's human nature, isn't it, to sort of, we all want to get ahead. We're all ambitious. Like I say, ambition means different things to different people, but it is very easy to think, when you've had an argument with your boss that day or whatever, that the grass is greener. And, I very often, I'm firmly take the belief that, all right, it might be, but in many ways, have you fertilised your own lawn before you move on? And I think that's the thing, to sort of always think that the answer lies externally is not always the case. Of course, there's certain situations and certain things that can't be resolved, but I see it as our job when we're working with the candidates, sort of fully understand, okay, is the situation we're in at the moment, can we actually work with where you are right now? Because often that can be the better way to kick your career forward. And if it stands that it can't, then cool, it makes sense maybe for us to start looking into the market. But no, I've not heard that before, but I'll definitely be using it moving forward. Cool. All right, Mike, well, thank you again for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I think it's been a fantastic episode. And wish you all the very best with your future endeavours at Kriya. It seems like the data science function is in very safe hands, and lots of exciting stuff ahead by the looks of it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
You too.